sorry that I'm happy that so many people have come. And I'm sorry that so many people have come, because it means that those at the back, I can hardly see you, and it's very easy for, or it's a little bit more difficult to establish a rapport, right, with beings that you don't even know are there. But we'll try our best. Let's sit for a few moments. And allow these words of aspiration to reverberate through your being. In the immeasurable expanse of nature in process, in faith and trust and wonderment, we give ourselves to this suchness, this seamless mystery of birth and dying. Spacious, loving, with feet solid in the earth, we nurture the hints at blessedness, the myriad faces and masks of luminous knowing. Moving as this flow of compassion and deepening inquiry, we engage with all beings in ways that support the integrity, the stability, and the beauty of the entire field of life and living. For the sake of all beings, wisdom, compassion, non-clinging awareness. Sadhu. As we progress a bit further in this series, I'll begin in the mornings after a bit of sitting and reflection with an invitation for people to share their experiences. Because my aspiration with this series is that we are actually sharing with each other and trying to kind of elucidate and clarify, right, themes of investigation, of interest-filled living that we can take into our living. We can talk a lot about the nature of mind and consciousness and bodies and interbeing and interrelationship and it's sort of like studying the menu. You know, we have a tremendous sense of all the options that are there. You know, there's kind of desserts, and there's main courses, and there's aperitifs, and there's little additional side dishes, and understanding how they all come together and how they're cooked and where the cook got the ideas from, and it's fabulously interesting. And by the time we finish studying the menu, we die of old age. But there's some people who are actually, although they're interested perhaps in the menu, their primary interest is in the eating. Okay? And so I wasn't sure how to title this series. I knew that I wanted to draw upon what I've called the Sadhana of Samantabhadra as a kind of it's a kind of a base menu to remind us of something. Right? But I actually was quite hesitant in doing that, because as soon as I say the word Samantabhadra, people go, "Oh, what's that? What does that mean? And how is that relevant to me?" and so on. And I'm not going to talk too much about Samantabhadra unless we get to about 8 classes down the line in this series, and maybe then I'll start talking a bit about it. But I'd like you to think right now, right? I mean, Samantabhadra is a kind of a central, how can I put this, kind of archetype, if you like, within many schools of Buddhism, which hint at a kind of an immensity of understanding and skill in living. It's not referring to, it's sometimes portrayed as a kind of blue Buddha figure in a yab-yum union with a white figure, such as in this painting. But this painting, I wonder if we can show the painting. Stephen, can we tilt the thing just to show everyone the painting?
I'll tell you when it's there.
Okay, tilt it up, Mary, and then the
up.
whole machine, just tilt it up and then come back.
Forward.
Yeah. Can you see it? Is it there?
Mary, Russia, let us know when.
There.
Okay. So some people think, oh, that's a picture of Samantabhadra. But that's not a picture of Samantabhadra at all. That's just a painting. Right? And actually the idea that maybe some kind of blue Buddha figure is living in your heart or in the essence of your mind or something is, you know, usually very misleading. You spend your whole time going cross-eyed trying to see him, her. Right? Is she in there looking within? Right? So I think to begin with, I thought, well, rather than calling this, you know, giving a title for this series, studying a sadhana of Samantabhadra, I thought we could call it Primordial Dharma, right? Kind of more my kind of overarching kind of picture, right? And I wrote a verse to try and give a hint at what I meant by Primordial Dharma. But just to remind some of you, one of the less kind of common explanations of the word Dharma is that Dar is from Dareti, and this is relative fact, right? Sanskrit and Pali, which means to hold, to support, to embrace, right? To cradle, right? And Ma is mother in so many different languages. Ma, 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 ma. And so we have that which mothers and cradles and holds and supports, right? The study of Dharma is to begin to study, to come to appreciate what is holding and supporting and cradling and nurturing your moment by moment living experience. Not your life. You don't have a life. You just live. A life is just a noun when we talk about it and we apply it to some absolutely ungraspable living. You see why it's so difficult to talk about, right? And the study and practice of Dharma, if you like, is a kind of a way of living that helps to reveal the kind of support, nurturing.
Sorry.
Good morning, that's all right. Make yourself comfortable. We'll get to that a little bit later this morning.
And tilt it back down?
Yeah, tilt it wherever you want it.
Does that look Marcel?
Good, we got two techies working on this now. So it's a kind of an investigation. And this is where this study, this practice begins with curiosity about what is supporting and cradling and holding and nurturing and mothering your living. Right? If you don't have that interest, if you're not interested in what does that, then probably you won't go very far with this. Right? It's probably not that interesting. It's too kind of theoretical or philosophical, or how does it apply to getting the breakfast on the table before the kids go to school, or these are the real questions, right? And it's not to negate these, right? But for many beings, right, we could call this, I think of this as a kind of primordial spiritualism, right? It's a kind of spirituality to be really deeply and profoundly wonderstruck, right, about this thing, which in Buddhism we sometimes give the word suchness, right? Because we don't know how to sort of name it. It's too big. Any naming it seems to miss the point. And so we can talk about Dharma, right? That which is we're studying, we're coming to investigate what nourishes and cradles and holds and supports and mothers us, whilst simultaneously, as we start to realize that we're supported by everything, right? We begin to realize that we are part of the support of everything else. And so we're starting to develop the skills of mothering and nurturing and cradling and supporting others, all beings that we meet. And in Buddhism, we sometimes say that, just for ease of talk, we say that the study and kind of investigation of that which mothers and so on is the activity of wisdom. Right? The activity of wisdom is not to be big brain and know everything. The activity of wisdom is having profound, deep, unconstrained curiosity about what's going on. That's very wise. That's a wise way of being, right? To be curious about what's going on, right? And then the cradling and supporting of others is compassion, wisdom and the compassion. And with this we walk the path. So I'd like to just revisit this poem, which you've all memorized and recited so many times and contemplated deeply, and I understand that, but I'm going to bore you to death by reading it again. Okay. Primordial Dharma, where meditation practice mirrors realization. Okay. Where path and goal are not different, right? The way we walk our life is not different from the goal that we're aiming at. Where what is studied or practiced is who is studying and practicing. Right? There's a kind of there's tremendous subtlety in this, actually. It's like you're embedded in the happening, being curious and studying the happening that you're embedded in. Words start to fail, and yet contemplation, sensitive inquiry, we have the capacity to go deeply into this. Where love and clear seeing perfumes the ever-fresh gardens of our lives. Right? Love and clear seeing is kind of perfumes. Think of the garden of your living. Right? Perfume. This is primordial Dharma. Okay? And the lives of all living beings. Primordial Dharma is an ungraspable treasure. Okay? I mean, I suppose that someone would try really hard to figure out how to copyright it or how to make a buck off it, but I'm not quite sure that we can make $1 off this. Okay. Fundamentally inconceivable. It is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. And this is actually an important point, and I'll try and speak a bit about this morning. That this sadhana is divided up into sections, and roughly we'll touch a section in one session. Okay? And yet, quite often our normal way of thinking about this is that the sadhana is a kind of progression. You've got preparation, we'll quickly go through that and get to the guts of it. Right? You kind of move 1, 2, 3, we're climbing the ladder, it's getting more profound as we go. But this is more like a hologram, where the whole is revealed in every part. Right? Where actually, if you really go deeply into the very, very first section that we're going to touch on today, you got it all. You don't need you can throw the rest of the sadhana away. Right? It's good at the beginning. It's good when you work at it with profound experience in contemplative work. Some of you have done lots of meditation. Some of you have not done very much meditation. Right? You know what I mean? You're just you say, oh, I'm just a beginner, I don't know anything about meditation. But you're not a beginner of living. Actually, we're all the same age. We all started about 4 billion years ago. Right? So what's give or take 10 years? I mean, hardly makes any difference, does it? Right? Against the vastness of evolving life that's given rise to a culture that can begin to raise these questions and so forth. Right? In a sense, a beginner is not necessarily a kind of an inexperienced being. Right? So these practices are good. You know, you begin where you are. You begin with the living that you are. That's where you begin, and it's good. This teaching will be good. Primordial Dharma. This is a sadhana of primordial Dharma. It's good in the middle. Right? After years of practice, you're no longer a beginner. You're kind of you're beginning to teach and so on. You're starting to get some kind of mastery. Right? And people go to you to study and so on, and it's still good. Why? Because this moment has never arisen before, and it's new. It's continuously new and fresh. As soon as you look into this living, you've never seen it before. That's why we say it's inexpressible. Right? You kind of like nail it down, and you have to go, but there's a bit more. Right? It's almost mute. And it's good at the end. That's when you realize that you have no idea what you're talking about teaching, and that you haven't got a clue what's going on, right? And you just rest, sharing and being this as best you can, and those practices are still useful. It's good at the beginning, it's good at the middle, it's good at the end. It mothers, holds, supports, and cradles everything. Primordial Dharma. Right? What is this? I mean, our you might say this whole practice, this whole meditation is leading us to a deepening understanding of what Dharma might actually mean. It's not a practice we don't have a final product and then we're going to practice it. It's almost like we spend our whole time trying to find out what the practice is, and we finally find out the practice is our here and now living. We've discovered it. So it's not I'm doing the practice of Samantabhadra, but I'm entering into inquiry. What is the nature of living? This ever fresh dancing of creativity and wonderment. It's what I am. It's what I do. This primordial Dharma that is also you. It manifests everyone. Mysteries unfolding, inviting investigation, realized by wise lovers of suchness. Everywhere, blessed. Makes me hot just to think about it. So we could think of this as a, today we're going to look at I urge you actually, or to accept an invitation from me to you. I urge you to accept this invitation. You don't have to accept this invitation, right? But the invitation is that unlike many of these sessions that we've had here at our house over the years, this one I do have the aspiration of supporting a kind of an ongoing study and exploration. I think it will still be good at the beginning and good in the middle and good at the end. So if people come to one thing or come in the middle, it'll be still interesting. I'm sure it will be. I think it will be. I hope it will be. But my invitation is that you might take this as a kind of a raising of question of possible avenues of exploration for you, which you then apply between now and next month when we meet again. And at that point, at the beginning of the session, I will say, any observations? We might not even get to this next section, right? Because we might just be dealing with that. I mean, we could spend a whole lifetime working on the first section. Right? But what I find is that lots of people have a very good kind of large-scale picture of a kind of universal spirituality and so on. But actually, when it gets down to actually doing anything, like actually refining their capacity to inquire, they don't know where to begin. And part of the tradition of sadhana is sometimes thought of as a practice. But we could think of this as really a kind of a reminder of major themes of inquiry that we could apply in the context of our living, right? Which will enrich our kind of this aspiration to kind of embrace our living in the world more profoundly and more compassionately. It's not a meditation technique that you take away and use, but some of you may find actually that you might find it interesting to set aside a bit of time of the day and to kind of work on this. Okay? So the sadhana begins, and one final thing is if you are going to kind of continue with this with us, I really, I think you'll find it very useful to print a copy of the sadhana, and you could bind it, and you could pay a little bit of money and get it done in color, right? Because it's a text. I don't even know who wrote this text. There was a time when I thought I'd written it, right? But I keep on going. I keep on discovering things. I think, what? Why? I didn't even realize I was going in there, because it's good at the beginning, it's good in the middle, and it's good at the end. Okay? And so it would give you something to refer to when you're sitting down. You think, oh, now I'm going to have a little bit of time to really deepen my exploration, in addition to all the other things you're doing. And I think also for some of you, and I'm kind of looking on the screen here because I know it applies to many of you, but it'll apply to some people in this room, that you already have a meditation practice that's going. But I think you will find that these themes can enrich the practice you're already doing. It's like these themes are not a separate practice. These themes are themes of living, and surely if you're doing a meditation practice, while you're doing it, you're living. so we could enhance that. Right? And this is for you to discover how to do. Right? So I'm not suggesting that I'm not asking people to kind of set aside all their spiritual practice and so on and just do this. Even though for some people maybe that's exactly what they need to do. But it's for you to realize that, and for you to kind of perhaps appreciate, I can use this, is very useful. It's a kind of really, it's quite universal, this practice. Okay? So the first section is called preparation. It really sounds like beginner's stuff, doesn't it? And I'll just read it to you. To cultivate this sadhana of Samantabhadra, arrange yourself in a comfortable posture. This is really complex, isn't it? It's very Buddhist, right? Other traditions and religions don't have postures. Right? What do you, I don't know, you float. You always have some kind of a posture. Right? Then making friends with your breathing, invite your entire body, brain, mind community to settle into a place of pristine stillness and vibrantly awake presence. This is step one. Right? I don't know, why should there be any more steps than that? That's good enough. Right? So what I'd like to spend this morning doing is to go through this very short little 2 sentences or 3 sentences and maybe open it up a bit. Okay? You notice that the text says to cultivate this sadhana. It could have said, I've come across texts that'll say to practice this sadhana. Okay? And for me, I think the word cultivate gets much closer to the reality of it. When we say practice, for many people, it's almost like doing something over and over and over and over again until either you get good at it, or for many people, the spiritual life is kind of doing this practice, hoping that somehow there'll be some enlightened moment, some dawning of grace, right, which will happen to them. So the practice is something you do over here, right, and hoping it'll get you somewhere. And if you don't get there, you're not practicing hard enough. You're not practicing enough, right? More hours on the cushion. Try harder. Sit straighter, right? Don't fool around with that. Get serious. But to cultivate a garden isn't like that. I mean, to cultivate a garden, and I've spoken about this a lot in the past, and so I won't belabor it. But for me, cultivation is very complex. It requires understanding and wisdom and skill and patience, right? You work with this. You have to plant seeds. You need to water periodically, otherwise it just doesn't grow. You need to weed. Occasionally, you actually have to go in there and pull some weeds out. It's just, I know you don't want to do that. You want to just allow it all to be natural, right? But somewhere along the line, you know, if you're making a garden, and the purpose of the garden, if you like, is to be able to feed yourself. You need food. Then actually you start making choices. You know, you start to prefer in your garden edible plants rather than poison things, right? Or things that poison all the other things, right? There may be weeding to do, right? You have to know when to harvest. And then not only that, it's not good enough to harvest. You've got to be able to kind of prepare the food. You know, I mean, there's all kinds of amazing foods that human beings eat, that if you didn't put it through a whole preparation stuff, you'd be poisoned. You know, it's amazing. They kind of soak the beans in cold water, and then they kind of, boil it or something, and then dry it, and then grind it, and at that point it's finally edible. Whatever it is, right? Cultivating what nourishes you, what mothers and supports you, right? So I'll have to skip ahead, and I'll come back to the cultivation, right? To cultivate this sadhana and I'd like to get rid of Samantabhadra at this point. I apologize. we're going to draw on Samantabhadra sadhana, but we're going to get rid of Samantabhadra up until about section 6, right? At which point we'll kind of introduce Samantabhadra again. But this is the only time when Samantabhadra is mentioned here, a sadhana of Samantabhadra, and then it's gone until we get halfway through the text. Right? So I think we should just forget about Samantabhadra right now. And I think it would really help just to instead just stick in the word naturalness. To cultivate this sadhana of naturalness, natural abiding, right? You are, the natural way of abiding is that you are massively interknowing with everything else. You're massively supported and cradled and nurtured by the whole of the living world, the whole of the universe, right? And simultaneously, what you do matters, right? In other words, you're part of the cradling and the supporting and the nurturing, not just of your children, not just of your family, but everyone. Every species, every creature, what we do matters. Right? So this is why I say naturalness. I mean, this is nothing extraordinary. It's just the reason why it sounds so extraordinary is because our culture has become so unnatural. Right? Our culture is not cultivating a sadhana of naturalness, but is cultivating a sadhana of power over others, of ego aggrandisement, right? Of kind of simplistic, kind of soundbite explanations for an incredible universe. So to cultivate, like just to read these words, you're reminding yourself, you sit down, it's not, I'm not going to watch my breath and I'm not going to wander to anything else. You know, I'm not going to have any thoughts on the side because I'm meditating and I'm supposed to be just watching the breath and not wandering. Right? No. That might be practice, but that's not what this is. This is cultivation. Right? To cultivate, and just the idea that my life is cultivating. This is already a huge practice, right? Like I'm walking through life, going to the supermarket, coming home, doing what needs to be done, doing my work, interacting with my family and friends and so on, in a way that is cultivating this praxis of naturalness, of which is inviting other beings to become more real and more natural. Right? This is what I'm doing. So this is really the whole sadhana, all the words. Now when I'm saying sadhana, I'm referring to these words, right? Is really a kind of elongated reminder of something that we already know in our bones. Right? If you didn't already know this in your bones, you'd probably read it and say, "Oh yeah, that's not very interesting." Well, yeah, it's okay, gone. Right? But if you begin to recognize this is what's happening in your bones, it's really, you begin to appreciate being reminded of what you value. Because we live in a culture right now, which is, we have developed tools of cultivating. Our culture cultivates. We're cultivated by our culture, right? And we're constantly being reminded that we are consumers, that we are taxpayers, that we are lower class, or that we are the privileged and we deserve to have everything, right? I mean, it's like we got huge, some of it is right out front, and some of it's just quietly subliminal. It's happening all the time. It's just, it's working away. And how many reminders do you have in the course? Like you just sort of go to your social media. And how often does your social media just sort of make you think, oh, I'm cultivating Dharma, primordial, naturalness. Right? It doesn't have to, it's whatever words you like to use, it doesn't matter too much. Just because it doesn't have words. Samantabhadra doesn't really have a name. Right? To cultivate this praxis this kind of investigation, this kind of inquiry into naturalness. This is, arrange yourself. Now, a lot of people say, take up a posture that's relaxed and alert. I mean, I'm quoting from very classic Buddhist texts. But in this one it says, arrange yourself. And this is kind of quite, it doesn't say arrange your body even. Because as soon as people say posture, they go, they immediately, I say, okay, let's meditate. And they all go, they kind of, there's a big jiggle as they kind of readjust the geometry of their body. That's posture. Right? But we're not just talking about that. Right? We're not talking about being in a rigid Buddha. In my very early days of wrestling with the possibility of learning the art of meditation, and I did quite a lot of practice, and I did a lot of retreats, and in my early days, my first long solitary retreat was 7 months in a hut, and I hardly saw anybody, and so you get a little craving for company, you can understand that 7 months, no talking, no nothing like this, and I was sitting in the hut there, and so I talked to myself. Could you imagine such a thing? Right? Oh, no, better meditate, stop fooling around. Oh, you're fooling. Oh, now you're serious. Now you're really practicing. When I was doing it good, I was blathering, and when I was doing it, I was having difficulty, I was blathering. So, I decided to solve my problem. We had Wangapeka, and we still have it. There's a beautiful Cambodian, I don't know where it originally came from, but it was given to the center. Gold leaf, heavy cast iron Buddha statue. Okay? And I was in this tiny little hut, which was not much bigger than maybe 2 or 3 beds, single beds together. That's kind of like the whole of the hut. So I'm sitting on my bed, which was my seat and my bed, and that was it. And then opposite me, I had a little counter, and I put this Buddha on the thing, and I would be sitting there, and I'd be like having a terrible day. Oh God, what am I doing here? I'm just wasting my time. I'm kind of deluded. I should just leave and get a proper job. And then there were other days when enlightenment's right around the corner. It's all happening. It's all great. And I'd go up and down and up and down, and the Buddha just sat there unmoving. And I started having this kind of tremendous aspiration to be like the Buddha. Because the Buddha, when I was happy, it was a lovely day, the Buddha. When it was a kind of miserable day, Buddha. And I thought, this is great. And I worked really hard at it, and it took me a while to realize that I was gradually turning myself into a cast iron statue. Well, I'm going to be like, this kind of image of what Buddha is, this kind of frozen thing. Right? So you're becoming rigid in your posture. Take up a posture that looks like a Buddha. Take up oh no, it's all right, you're Westerners. You don't have to sit cross-legged or anything. You can sit in a chair, but make sure it's a straight back chair. And tuck your chin in. This is quite a few. Actually, sometimes at certain points, these are useful instructions. They can help us, right? But for a lot of people, they just end up being added burdens that they have to struggle with, right? So it doesn't say anything about that. It says arrange yourself in a comfortable posture. And of course, this takes for granted that we know what yourself is. Do we mean, are you your body? Well, that's part of me, yeah, so I guess my body's part of what I have to arrange. What about my emotions? Yeah, well, arrange your emotions. And what about that kind of flow of yakking that's going on internally? Yeah, that's part of me being. I can't really say that's not me because it's all part of me. Right? What about my expectations for tomorrow? Oh yeah, they're part of me too. It doesn't say arrange your body in a comfortable posture. It says arrange yourself. This is a massive inquiry. You just kind of stopped. Bang! What on earth is myself? And what does, when I have this kind of modern Zen koan of what does it mean for all of me to be present with and for all of you? All of me. What does it mean? So when all of me is with and for all of you. To arrange all of myself in a comfortable posture. And I've got a lot of mileage in my life out of kind of looking at words. I kind of like words are part of my life, and so sometimes I'll take words apart. What on earth does this mean? Comfortable. What's comfortable? And then I thought, well, calm is kind of with, and fort is strength. Like when you're feeling when you're feeling comfortable, you feel strong. You feel confident. You feel balanced. You feel that's comfort, right? If you're all swaddled up and you're kind of comfortable, but you're all dulled out, and you might feel incapable of, right? There's a sense of part of being a self is having a sense of agency. I can do. Right? Oh, I can't really meditate, but I suppose it's time I ought to do my meditation. I know it'll be good for me. I'll kind of sit down in this uncomfortable posture and hope something good comes out of it, but it probably won't. That's extreme. So we come, what for you? This is the inquiry. Before you can even, each section here is really an invitation for us to inquire into really deep and profound things. What is comfort to me? Is comfort irrelevant to you? If you say yes, I think you're seriously deluded. You're deluding yourself. Because I think all beings are, our cat is interested in a comfortable posture. Right? Creatures kind of move along a gradient of kind of pleasure and wellness. So we don't even realize it. We're looking, you got this kind of like little compass that's guiding your life. What is comfort, right? Arrange yourself. And I think of flower arranging. This is a whole section on ikebana, right? So you kind of you got different stems and so on, different flowers, different colors and so on, and you arrange them into pleasing. Some are high and some are low, and some form a foundation. And there's a whole, Japanese ikebana flower arranging. There's a whole life philosophy tied up in that. So imagine for a moment you're a flower arrangement. It's a strange idea. It's quite different from taking up the correct posture for meditation. It's like one day the flower arrangement is more kind of satisfying and pleasing this way, but another day it's more satisfying and pleasing that way. It's not every flower arrangement is exactly the same. This is the correct way to do it. They're all different. Depends on how my emotions are that day, how they arrange with my thinking, how the clarity of my mind and the kind of pleasure in my muscles, right, is kind of reflecting with the weather. Right? This is like what is think of posture as a kind of more like a disposition, a kind of an attitude rather than a kind of just a physical geometry. It's kind of a posture of mind is like an attitude, right? And what's an attitude for you which is comfortable, to be curious, to feel wonderstruck? Like just see if you can contact this right now, right? And what's the feeling there? What's the fort quality? Right? Not fort as a protect. You're in the fort and you've got all the walls up around you, but it's strength, right? And then you think of a time when you find the whole situation distasteful and you wish you were somewhere else. How much strength do you feel now? it kind of not most people, not much. Right? So it's not a matter of just quickly get in this posture and get on with the sadhana. The whole exploration of like what is a way of being with my, like a kind of a dancing of my body and my emotions and my empathy and my understanding and my knowledge and my relationships. They're all dancing together in a way that is strengthening, not macho, muscly fort strength, but a kind of a strength that's in flexibility and pliability and engaging. Right? You have to find what strengthens your being. It's not good enough for somebody else to tell you, oh, this will strengthen your being and this will weaken your being. We have to know this in our core. Eating these foods is part of having a comfortable posture. It's I'm strengthened by being curious and interested. And I'm weakened by being frightened and doubtful. Oh, so arrange yourself. How do I arrange my body, my speech, my mind, my whole being, myself? Arrange yourself in a comfortable disposition, right, towards everything and anything that's coming up. Right? So you do the best you can. Right? Then, making friends with your breathing. Right? And actually, in here, this first section, by the way, covers virtually the entire path of Theravadan meditation. Right? I mean, some of the previous writings that I've done, like, for example, Breathing the Natural Way to Meditate, and Foundations of Mindfulness, and Walking in Wisdom, and occasionally we've referred to these three as a kind of mindfulness trilogy. Right? They give kind of more hints and details and supports and ideas of like how to make friends with your breathing. But here in this text, we just say, making friends with your breathing. And what do we mean by friendship? It's kind of like a non-clinging, non-critical, visceral pleasure of being with another. That's how I think of like friendship. It's kind of a visceral feeling of friendship, right? A kind of it's non-clinging, non-controlling pleasure in just being with the other as they are, the way they are, rather than just pleasure in them being the way I want them to be for me, which is kind of different, right? So imagine like developing this kind of pleasurable kind of openness, non-clingingness about your breathing. Okay? So you're kind of arranging yourself in a comfortable posture. Maybe you're kind of lying on your bed, right? Maybe you're sitting in your chair. Maybe you're walking while you're doing this. Maybe you're kind of riding a bicycle. You happen to be right smack in the middle of your cultivating here, right? And you are making friends with your breathing. Let's do this. Let's make friends with our breathing right now. And then sometimes we can learn things more by contrast. So now I want you to make enemies of your breathing. Right? Be critical of your breathing. Try to breathe in a certain way. I want you to all have long exhalations and very short inhalations. Okay, that's what we're going to do. The first thing you're doing is you're kind of judging the breath to see if you're doing it, right? This is like judging your friend to see if they're doing what they're... Could you allow your friend to be what they are? And what they are is continuous change and revelation. the friend you have this moment is not the friend you have 1 moment later. I'm too dull to notice it. I was thinking that, aren't you the same person I was with yesterday? Marcy, I'm surprised to see you so soon after you sort of went back to the States, and now here you are again. But I know you're the same person. Or are you? Right? Subtle. I mean, it may be in one sense, in a kind of a, if we don't look too carefully, it might be good enough to say they're the same. But if we start to really look deeply, and some of the looking is very sensitive, and so it's almost like to really feel, to make friends with your breathing is almost as if you're listening to the breathing. And if you want to really listen to something that's really subtle, often you hold your breath. It's a strange kind of thing here, you know? Right? So you're becoming incredibly soft, making friends with your breathing. Imagine a friend that's such a friend that you've got not the slightest feeling you have to perform for them. You don't have to behave for them in any special way. You know this friendship, whatever this mystery of friendship, this extraordinary simple pleasure of being together without trying to control anything, feeling confident and trusting in this. Friendship is something special here. Right? And so you're making friends with the breathing. Maybe you smile. Maybe you have to take little detours and say it's okay to breathe this way. Right? But actually, making friends with your breathing is something which is available to you 24 hours a day. The second you look, there it is. Right? If we say focus on or make friends with your visualization of a blue Buddha figure floating in space, right? Then sometimes you look and it's not there. Right? That's contrived, that's artificial, that's kind of generated, so to speak. But you're breathing. If you are alive, if you're a living, multi-celled organism, you breathe. It's not negotiable. Right? So are we actually making friends with our breathing, or are we beginning in the process to develop a friendship with the dynamic of living that we are? Right? Making friends with your breathing. Invite. Don't demand. Don't say, now I'm going to have my body, brain, mind community settle. You're not settling. You're not settling fast enough. You're not settling good enough. You know, actually, you gradually start to realize that you're always settled. It's just that sometimes you've decided you don't like where you're settled. There's never a moment when you're not settled in being the fullness of being that you are. It's a strange thing. It's so obvious, but somehow we forget it so often. So, making friends, right, with your breathing. This is kind of basic anapanasati. Right? As I say, breathing, the natural way to meditate. It's a whole book on making friends with your breathing. Right? But you don't need to study the book. You just need to make friends with your breathing. But I'm pointing this out because I'm saying that sometimes we think, I'd like a little bit more help with this, and that's one place you might find helpful. Okay? Invite. Okay? Invite. Demand that your body relax into a place of pristine stillness. Good luck. Mm-hmm. Right? You know, when you genuinely invite, have you ever invited someone and then they can't come and you're kind of a little bit pissed off? I invited you. You go, well, was that really an invitation, or was that actually a covert demand which was actually framed up as an invitation. Right? Because really, an invite, right, is like, again, I'm going to play with my words here. It kind of means invitalize. It is not exvite or provite or previte or transvite. It's just, right? Invite. And like an invitation is like an invitalization of possibility. Okay? So that you're inviting your entire body, brain, mind, community. Right? This is huge. What is my body, brain, mind, community? You know, when I was young, I remember that we had a family doctor. This is, I'm talking about young, like 5 years old enough to remember these things, but young enough to experience it this way. You know, and so I'd be taken to the doctor, if it was necessary, by my mother. And we would go to see Dr. Bain, who gets rid of the pain. So I would never remember his name if it wasn't that it pain and Bain kind of rhymed, you know. So Dr. Bain gets rid of the pain. Right? So you go to Dr. Bain, right? And he was a medical doctor, and he did things with your body. You know, he did things with your body. And, you know, you get drugs or surgery or something, you know, with your body. Something wrong with your body, you go to the doctor, right, for that. And then, but gradually we started to see that if there was something wrong with your thinking or your feelings or something, we call that your mind, right? And so you didn't go to a doctor when there was something wrong with your thinking or your kind of feeling. You went to a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, or like if you're looking for help that way, right? But we make this distinction between body and mind, you know, as if you've got a body and you've got a mind, and everyone sort of thinks they know where their body is, and no one's got a clue where their mind is. Okay? And so gradually, you know, there was this kind of separation, and I remember part of my family upbringing, right? My mother was a medical artist, and she would draw anatomical diagrams and so on for anatomy texts, and she worked for the University of Toronto Faculty of Dentistry. She drew teeth, roots and stuff, right? But so I'm just saying this because she was interested in biology and science and art and these kinds of things. And I remember one day she was incredibly excited because she'd come across some writings by some guy named, I think it was Korsybski or someone, right, who'd kind of coined a new term, and it was just radical and amazing and so exciting. It was like body-mind. That you actually began to recognize that body-mind are kind of one system, that they're not actually two totally separate things. And if one sort of moves one way, the other one's going to adjust, right? It kind of goes like that. And so we start to have a kind of body-mind, right? And then, you know, in a similar fashion, right, we still, though, are back in the days of separation, because we think it's my body and mind, right? And we don't realize that we're part of an ecological community. And that actually I'm not just a kind of a solo body-mind. I'm a body-mind community. I'm a community of molecules. I'm a community of cells. I'm a community of organs. I'm a community of organisms, pollinators, birds, microorganisms in the soil, right? Critters in the sea, right? We are humans. We are inseparable. Our bodies and our thinking and our community are all inseparably this. And so to kind of remind us of this, you could go body-mind community. Because we so often think, oh, I'm an individual. And we forget that it's not, oh, I need a sense of community. It's true, you need a sense of community, but you don't need community. You are community. And so I'm using these words this way to kind of remind myself, and you might find it useful to remind yourself. But then I started to notice that as people, became really interested in mind, right, they started to do a very strange thing in science. They started to equate the study of mind with the study of brains. It was this kind of a little bit strange, and so somehow if people say, you say, well, point to your heart. And actually people are not really thinking biological pump when they go, it's kind of like the heart of your being. Where's your heart? Where's your heart? Your feelings, right? And you say, well, in my head, my thinking, right? And so, it's almost like we can say, oh yeah, well, we're studying our body and we forget about our brain. Or perhaps even worse, we're studying our brain and we forget about our body, right? And so for that reason, I felt it was really useful to throw in brain here as a reminder. It's a horrible tongue-tied phrase. Body, brain, mind community. Yeah? And in the text, I've used a side slash. And this text was put together a number of years back. And I've changed it now. If I have a new edition, I'll put the upgrade. And it's a very subtle little upgrade, right? What I've done is in between, instead of a side slash, which sometimes indicates, well, it's all one. It's sort of like they're all the same. They're all this one thing. They're not. The functioning of your brain is affecting all the rest of your body. The functioning of the rest of your body is affecting your brain. The functioning of your body and brain is affecting your knowing. The functioning of your knowing is affecting your appreciation of community. The functioning of community is affecting it's back and forth. So instead of having a side slash, I've used a little tilde, like a little squiggle in between. And it's saying kind of they're complementary. They complement each other. When one shifts, the other shifts. They're all inseparably joined in a kind of a relational way of being, right? So you're arranging yourself in a comfortable posture. And whilst making friends with your breathing, you're inviting your entire body, brain, mind community. And that invites you to begin to appreciate what the entire of your body, brain, mind community is. It might actually lead you into little detours of anatomical meditations or something. Or can you feel what's the difference between placing your interest, I'll say that instead of attentiveness or awareness, I'll just say your interest, in the area of your stomach, and placing your interest in the area of your head. And see what happens, how you function differently. Some people, the reason why they point to their head is because unawarely they're kind of walking around in their head. If you say, well, you refer to the rest of their body, it's almost like they mentally look down to find the rest of their body. But what if you were all of this? Where's the center? Where's the up and where's the down? Right? Right? So you're invited into like a study of Kaya Nupassana, like awareness of body, awareness of feelings, awareness of states of mind, awareness of all the relational matrix play, if you like, of body, feelings, mind, other, community, right? This is foundations of mindfulness. This is very fundamental Buddhist teaching. But often the way it was taught was like a technique for many people. The way they receive this, it's like a technique that they do, and meanwhile they're oblivious to the body, brain, mind community thing that's dancing, that's doing the exploration. And somehow have this kind of crazy, misguided aspiration that we might be able to point more directly at what needs to be done. to settle, invite your body, brain, mind community to settle into a place of pristine stillness and vibrantly awake presence. Okay? And so, you settle, you're making friends with your breathing. Right? Sometimes, well, I've found, I'm just speaking from my own experience, that I might find one day one word of this is really juicy for me, and it invokes all the rest of it. So comfortable, fortable. Right? Cultivate. Making friends. Breathing. Body, brain, mind, community. Inviting. It's not, there's something, we settle in, and we come to this place though of feeling more, there's a kind of a pristine stillness, right? Which is simultaneously vibrantly awake and present. And present isn't a kind of a frozen gift under a Christmas tree. It's constantly dancing and changing, this present. Right? Oh, here's a present. And, between my letting go and you picking it up, it changed. Whoops, that was a mistake. You can give it back, I'll try again. Sometimes I'm not able to present to you what I would like to present. Right? But in that we begin to have a feeling, this pristine stillness is a deepening sense of settled in this dancing of beingness that I am. Without grabbing, in a sense, it's like there's a flowing river of the universe giving rise to me sitting here, meditating, or whatever you want to call it. Right? And then sometimes, as I mentioned actually in one of the recent classes, it's almost like we pop out of the river. Instead of being this river that's flowing along, we pop out and we're an observer standing on the bank of the river watching it go by. Oh, she's really speedy today. Oh, she's so calm today. Oh, it's a nice one today. Oh, this is a lousy one today. Oh, you've got to try harder one today. Not good enough one today, right? You're kind of the critic on the bank of the observer. And yet, actually, is the question you might raise is, how does the universe dance in all its fullness to give rise to the experience of being an observer, observing the flow of the river? Where what is studied is no different than who is studying. Right? It's very subtle. But this sadhana, in one sense, for me, is a kind of distillation of 50 years of involvement with Buddhist practice and study. Right? It's a kind of attempt to kind of just touch something which can bring us into the heart of something which is so deeply meaningful to beings and yet so elusive. It just kind of slips through your fingers. It's so easy to just kind of, breathing meditation. It's kind of gone. Right? So we're settling into. And it doesn't mean, like, pristine stillness doesn't mean there's nothing moves. The river doesn't move away from being the river. The universe is always the universe. Right? And there's a kind of a quality of settledness. We're talking now about a kind of, you might say, a subjective experience of this is just the beginning, this is just to prepare for this. Right? These are kind of ideal qualities from which we can really begin to explore. This is kind of our foundation starting point. It's no beginner stuff at all. It's profound. Okay? So pristine stillness, this kind of settledness, and at the same time there's a kind of a vibrant discernment, awakeness. Right? These are the pristine stillness is sometimes in Buddhism we call samatha, right? And this kind of vibrant, awake presence, sometimes we call vipassana. These are two themes which are going to move all the way through this. That's why the blue figure and the white figure, and they're depicted, right? Once someone came to me and said, "Oh, I'm beginning to see you belong to the dirty schools, don't you?" I said, "What on earth are you talking about?" And I had one of these pictures of a yab-yum figure up on the wall, and I saw her eyes go up to the picture, and yeah, I'm a member of the dirty school. Because if you think about it, this is sexual union is probably the most intimate, direct experience that human beings have of what we're hinting at here. Imagine though a union, out of sexual union comes offspring. We're not talking about sex for pleasure. Nothing wrong with that. Good stuff, right? But actually sex before that was on about the universe continuing, right? And it's a creative act. And we bring this kind of pristine stillness together with this kind of luminous, vibrant awakeness, curiosity, question. And something unexpected is birthed from it. That's what's behind the yab-yum. You could almost say yin-yang, right? It's kind of like, that's that symbolism. It's really talking about inner and outer, self and other. It's really talking about this kind of creative dancing, which is constantly in movement, and yet to settle into this creative dancing that's constantly in movement, one can feel absolutely pristine, still. There's a stability there. And we're kind of we're beginning to learn the taste of this. By the end of the sadhana, it's getting very explicit, going into detail on this. But at this stage, one could just take this, and perhaps we've got the whole teaching right here in a nutshell. What more do we need? To cultivate this sadhana of naturalness, arrange yourself in a comfortable posture. So if you can do this as I'm speaking, because I want you to perhaps you might be able to do this as you read the text. Then making friends with your breathing. Invite your entire body, brain, mind community to settle into a place of pristine stillness and vibrantly awake presence. Sometimes I think of this as releasing into a primordial ocean of contemplation. It doesn't belong to any particular religious tradition. This is universal. Speaking in a very kind of practical, ordinary way, I think that many of you would eventually, if you could do this, you would discover it to be really useful and supportive in your life. To see if you can set aside some amount of time each day. It might be 5 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be a whole morning, right, or whatever it is. It's that part doesn't really matter. It's how it fits with your living and what's possible for you. But to take this text But not to read through it with your intellectual cap on, what does it all mean? But just as a kind of, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. It's kind of a reminder, just as you might find it useful for me to speak these words and you can kind of settle as I'm speaking. And then we're going to have a month where I'm not going to speak these words. Other people could speak these words, but they're just not spoken that much in our culture. So you have to make, if you're going to cultivate this garden, you have to kind of remember that you've got a garden. It's kind of like, so every morning you get up in the morning and you kind of remember, oh yeah, I'm gardening. And then you kind of look down and there's the garden. Or you've got some kind of, this is to act as a reminder. And to each day, at least once a day, just to slowly go through this first section, use these words, make them your own, right? But then like settle with this and then see if you can return to the experience many times in the course of the day without the text, without the words. You know, just dipping into it in whatever way feels natural. But the value of doing this, at least on a daily basis, is that gradually what happens is you begin to internalize good reminders for something which is non-sectarian. It's profoundly universal and inclusive. And I think that in our day and age, this is deeply valuable. I'm going to pause at this point and see if there are any questions or clarifications or observations or comments that anyone either here in the room or on the screen would like to share. And could you speak so that the people here can hear? I mean, the people on the screen can hear.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, so I feel, just to put it simply, I can only do this when I reference to myself. I have to start here. Because everything else, like all these words I've written down, all these words in the text, they're inspirational. But when I stop and sit, which I do, or when I pause while I'm walking, or whatever I'm doing, the dishes, like it has to start here, right, with the, you said, the kaya and vipassana, the da-da-da. It has to start here. And it almost feels like a bit of a dumb question because I know intellectually, because I've heard many, many speakings and teachings, that it doesn't, that it's interconnected, into being, into knowing. I know that. But I'm asking you, in a way, for this sort of guidance that I can't start anywhere else but with myself. And I'm sorry if it's a dumb question.
Well, I'm not sure what your question is, except that I mean, the reason is because it seems to me you're making a statement rather than a question. And it seems so obvious. What else is there to be said? Of course you start with yourself. You start with your experience. What else have you, there's nothing else in the universe to work with. What has anyone got? How could it, I'm going to begin with somebody else's experience. And then the next thing you know is you realize that this is your understanding of someone else's experience, so you're still beginning with yourself. Like, arrange yourself. This begins, that's why I fearlessly use the evil word, self. I didn't start off by saying there's no self. You know, people like to think Buddhism says, oh, there's no self, and what do you mean by yourself? There is no self. Arrange yourself in a disposition to washing the dishes, or doing your gardening work, or looking after your family or whatever you have to do in a comfortable way. In that comfortable distance. That's the first instruction, right there. Of course it's yourself. You've got nothing else to work with. So I'm sorry, but I don't get the question.
Okay. I'll think about that, or I will maybe come back to you. Thank you.
This is something which is a profound realization, actually. You know, we live, because to realize that everything you experience, like you intellectually you can know this. You can know that no one is seeing this room the same way you're seeing it. No one is hearing me speaking the way you're hearing me speak. No one is getting the same nuance of meaning from the words, the reverberation of the words that you are. You know that. And yet, why is it so and yet that's not me, that's words. That's the room. That's not myself. But actually everything that I experience, everything is arising in this. This is, I mean, let me just blow everyone's mind for a moment. I said I wouldn't do this, right? But I just turned to the title page. Samantabhadra is variously described in Mahayana writings as totally positive, or the sky of ultimate reality, or the all good, or universal good, or naturally arising rigpa, or naturally occurring ever fresh awareness. It's not saying these are all the same, but these are sometimes referenced. Or Samantabhadra is the innate primordial wisdom compassion, or is the basic space of phenomena, or is the ground Dharma kaya, or is the primordial Buddha mind, or is suchness, or is the nature of mind, or is Buddha nature, or is the original basic awareness. Actually, I can't exhaust. There's so many ways that Samantabhadra has been described. Right? All of these are qualities of interbeing, interknowing that you are. Right? And you know, the first part of the sadhana walks a kind of delicate tightrope, but it doesn't worry too much if you fall off it on this one, because later on the sadhana provides a corrective, right? But you see, one of the little kind of the ways people kind of fall off the path, and then they might feel there's something wrong with this, and then they go through all kinds of attempts to adjust. And that is, people say, oh, it's all arising in my mind. It's all arising in my knowing. But at that point, that's why I emphasize all the time body, brain, mind community, because it's all arising in your own brain, in your own body, but it's all arising in your community. And this room is part of the community of you. The people are part of the community as you. The little guys living in your intestines are part of the community of you. You know, like, we forget this all the time. And so we say, I have to begin with myself. And I have to show this to you when for the people on the screen, when Anne said this, she said, I have to begin with myself. And there's the question that I'm raising here, that for you to raise, is there a smidgen, is there a tiniest hint of belittlement happening here? And I don't mean that you're kind of making fun of yourself like that, but I mean you're littling yourself instead of enlarging yourself. You know, like my being. You know, Walt Whitman said my being embraces, you know, cosmoses kind of thing. And then there's time, well, I have to begin with me. I suppose I have to begin with me, right? But this is like every question here is an invitation. What on earth do I mean by myself? That's really interesting. Actually, what we want you to begin with is not making friends with your breathing. It's not taking up a comfortable posture. It's not inviting your body, brain, mind community to settle into any kind of place whatsoever. It's about invigorating your curiosity about what on earth's going on. And when your curiosity about what on earth's going on is invigorated, you don't even need any of this stuff. This is the natural path of awakening. This is natural awakening. Right? It's like, so these are all kind of what we might think of as skillful means. And we participate in the skillful means in the sense that we gradually start to recognize, oh, and you do this all the time. I mean, you realize, I can select, because doing this it works, it's good, it tends to support a good space, you know. But behind that is like, are you trying to get the good space, and in the process you've lost the curiosity about how is the universe giving rise to this trying to get anything, right? And so, you know, in a sense, what we're really cultivating here is like an extraordinary heart of loving inquiry. There wouldn't be any need for Dharma teaching if everyone just rested in this. And yet, when you do settle, when you do have a moment of being, either by accident or intention or what have you, of just finding yourself in a place that's still and really alert, the whole thing just seems extraordinarily wondrous and interesting. And you might feel absolutely tongue-tied trying to describe this to anyone else. You might feel embarrassed trying to say it to somebody else that it's important because you don't really know why, but you know. This is a visceral sense. It's the flavor of the river as it flows. There's a quality of bliss, a quality of clarity, a quality of unpin-downableness about this, right, that we're reaching for. And so we begin, you see, perhaps you have this feeling that you have to begin with myself. Just change your gesture. try changing. Well, I got to begin with myself. And I've got to begin with myself. Boy. And the sound of the rain on the roof, and the wind in the trees, and the breath, and the tides of air moving through the harbor of my body, in and out, settling, wondrous. There's only the preparation point. We're just setting up a good starting point for our exploration. I haven't been paying attention to the screen, but was there anyone in cyberspace there who was wanting to share anything?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. I don't know where middle is.
Right side middle.
Oh,
White.
Daria? You have to unmute yourself. Thank you. Oh, I still can't hear you. What's going on?
There's something on her end. Her microphone. Oh, she's gone. She's logged out.
Oh,
somehow.
she didn't know what she did.
Her internet's been going in and out. She's popped in and out a few times.
Okay.
She's back. She's coming back.
So picture. If you're still there, Daria, and still making it work, you can try once more. Otherwise, you kind of faded out. You just had a picture and you didn't have any voice.
She's just rejoined again.
For those of you that are first time visiting us here on Sunday, over the course of my life, I've taught all over the place, and so there's people joining us from Canada and from Brazil and from Australia and from the United States and from Belgium and different places. And because I'm not likely to be traveling to these places ever again, this is at least a kind of less than ideal, but still useful support for some of their explorations. And it may feel like a support for your exploration, to kind of have a sense you're joining with like-minded beings in all sorts of different places inquiring into this mystery. Yeah. So I think we might,
No, Daria.
we're going to call this morning.
Can I ask a question?
Ah, please, yes.
Can you explain suchness?
Yeah. Suchness is a kind of one of the translations of tattva. It's a Sanskrit Pali word, and ta means such, and ta, the suffix on the end is ness, right? So you have, some of you are familiar with the word shunyata, which is like shunya ta. So shunya is empty, ta ness. I mean, that this isn't answering your question, but it's a beginning to go here. And there's a sometimes the Buddha would refer to himself, like when he was doing like Anne was doing, kind of referring to himself, his self, right? He would say, like, who are you? Who? Someone might ask the Buddha, who are you? And he would say, I'm Tathagata. And the word gata is actually, it's related to our English word gate, which is a doorway into a garden or something like that, a gate. But it's also, if you spell it a little bit differently, it's one walks with a gait. It's kind of like it's a rhythm of walking, right? And it's actually the word, it's a verb, and it means to come and to go and to be, right? And it can be used. So he was referring to to himself. He said, like, he wanted to give a truthful answer to his experience of himself, which was inseparable from the whole of everything. And so he said, this is tattva in motion, going. It's the moving suchness, moving thusness. Sometimes it's thus or such. It's kind of such as it is. It's almost like, sometimes I think of it tongue-in-cheek as the great Buddhist cop-out word, right? Because and in another sense, I don't want to sort of, I'm not really intimating this at all, but I am kind of, I'm using words the way we use it. I mean, some people might use the word God as meaning like the totality of everything, right? A kind of universal totality of everything. And he would say, and so we could say tathagata, right? And so suchness is kind of referring to this kind of ungraspable mystery of the whole in a simple way, which, I've been blathering along now for a few minutes trying to respond to your question. Whereas we could just have one little word which is mysteriously sufficiently meaningless that you don't have many projections on it. There's maybe a trouble with some people would have with the word God, because it's like sometimes they immediately get a figure of a male figure up in the sky. I mean, this is a bit crude, right? But it's not uncommon.
Would you say oneness?
No, because the suchness it's like the total dancing of all the things as a oneness, but it's not one. It's just like we were in my very early days of studying with my main teacher, and he was giving a talk at Oxford University in England, and I remember. I was kind of young, wet behind the ears. I didn't know much. I was just keen. That was the main thing. I was keen, and I remember at some point there was a person there who sort of stuck out like a bit of a sore thumb, because this was in the early 1970s, and probably most of us who studied with Namjal at the time, we would all easily agree to being called hippies. You know, so we're all wearing kind of extravagant, kind of flowery this, that, and the other, and, you know, flower power, all this kind of stuff. And there was this one person, he stuck out like a sore thumb because he was wearing a three-piece banker suit. And he was very thin, and he was like striped suit and everything, and he was sitting there. And he was sitting in a full lotus. Like, most of us couldn't even sit in a full lotus, but it was pretty impressive kind of thing. It was such a different thing. And at one point, I remember he kind of waved his hand and said, "But surely, Rinpoche," he had this kind of very kind of aristocratic kind of English accent kind of thing, you know. He said, "But surely, Rinpoche, it's all one." And Rinpoche said, "Yes." And then he leaned forward and said, "But all one what?" And you know, it's not enough to say it's not just one, right? Later on in the sadhana, right, after we've fallen off the side of thinking it's all in my mind, it's all one, I'm the whole universe, there's nobody else there, all of a sudden pops into the sadhana a training to see every other being as the whole universe, right? So we have to work at this because it's very easy and seductive to fall into this thing, oh yeah, it's all happening in my body, brain, mind community. But actually, it's simultaneously happening in that cricket's body, brain, mind community.
Interconnected.
Yeah, profound, right? So suchness was a kind of, also gave a sense of, like Tathagata, not so much the word suchness, but one who is dwelling or a moving of, I am a moving of suchness. And when the Buddha referred to himself as Tathagata, gradually in Buddhism, classical studies, it started to mean, well, Tathagata was like a synonym for Buddha. But actually what he was trying to say was, I'm suchness, and can't you see you are suchness too? It's all suchness. He wasn't, this is not a claim for some unique, special, enlightened place. This is the birthright of everyone. Suchness, right? So it's a kind of it's like a simple, and so back to the very first verse that was separate from the sadhana, in the immeasurable expanse of nature in process. It's absolutely immeasurable, right? It's vast, it's self-creating, it's transforming as we go. It's never the same. It's, you know, this creative, interbeing, interknowing, collaborative creation, right? In faith and trust and wonderment, we give ourselves to this nature in the vast expanse of the whole of this nature unfolding in process. That is the suchness. We give ourselves to this suchness. And here's where actually your mudra and is useful. It's like this suchness. Suchness isn't some objective thing that's out there. It's like this unique experience of my experience, this suchness. And the most recent book that we published was, I called This Nectar of Naturalness. And I'll refer to it probably as next time we gather, right? And the reason why it was our latest book was because I needed to write it before I could write a commentary on this sadhana. But I don't know if I'll write a commentary on this sadhana, because this nectar of naturalness flows all the way through the sadhana. And people would say to me, oh, I was reading the Nectar of Naturalness, or I was reading your book Nectar of Naturalness. And I'm going, no, the book's called This Nectar of Naturalness. This Nectar of Naturalness. And if you're practicing, you have to be able to say the same thing. You go, this Nectar of Naturalness. Not I have to begin with myself. I have to begin with this Nectar of Naturalness. That's exactly the same thing. That's suchness, right? So we give ourselves to this suchness. We open into this suchness, this seamless mystery of birthing, dying, coming into being, passing away, constant transformation, right? This is what we're, in a sense, like that first verse, could be understood to encapsulate the whole sadhana. So that's just a few words on suchness. There are thousands of pages, agonizing intellectual kind of treatises on the nature of suchness within the Buddhist tradition. But I'm trying to kind of hint at this in a way that doesn't just turn it into an abstract concept. When you're still, when you're really open, when you're feeling in tune with the world, you're approaching an appreciation of, kind of increased appreciation of suchness. That's what I'm meaning when I use that word.
It's the time Daria is back.
Daria, I now see your face on the screen. If we can get your voice on the screen and you can still remember what you wanted to say, please try once more.
Okay, can you hear me, Tarchin?
Eureka!
Thank you so much to start with. And I would like to say, and this runs through my mind a lot, at the beginning you mentioned dar and ma. Well, dar in Ukrainian means gift. So, that's a really good way for me to always think about how this gift of, being alive and the opportunity to be such as we are, I guess. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. This primordial gift. Yeah. Perhaps we could stop for this morning, but not stop in our inquiry, not stop in our living, but just stop this format for a moment. Okay. Just coming back, making friends with your breathing. Inviting your entire body, brain, mind community to settle into a natural space of stillness and engaged presence. Learning the art of remembering this and then dwelling in this for longer and longer periods under a wider and wider range of circumstances. This is our training. This is what we're working on. This is what we're cultivating. By the power of these wholesome activities, may our lives be rich with awakening. Living thus, may we abandon all unwholesomeness through the endless storm of birth, illness, old age, and death. May we help all beings to realize their true interbeing, interknowing nature. Sarvamangalam, Sarvamangalam, Sarvamangalam. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you all, wherever you are in the world. May you have a wonderful month between now and next time we possibly will meet. Right? Good.